Goodbyes can be hard. Last words, final times together, they're always especially important. Today, on Thursday of Holy Week, we recall the Last Supper and the new command that Christ gave. Welcome to the Maundy Thursday edition of Mornings with Bishop Robert. Thanks for joining me. You know, my goal is to introduce people to the Jesus they never knew and help them get to know him and his word personally and better. If our time together today really speaks to your heart, let me invite you to like this video, subscribe to them, and also share it with a friend. And if you're not sure why today is called Maundy Thursday, I think the answer will challenge you. So grab a cup, lift it up, and let's jump into our time together today. This day on our journey to Resurrection Sunday for me personally is the most moving and instructive. You know, some time ago I was preparing this devotion and I found myself perusing Dennis Bratcher's very helpful website at the Christian Resource Institute. As I was reading his article on Maundy Thursday, well, I realized it said everything I wanted to say. And truthfully, I think he does a better job at it than I would. So I've excerpted and adapted his excellent article, and I want to give him the credit he deserves. Thanks, Dennis. During the last few days, Jesus and his disciples had steadily journeyed from Galilee towards Jerusalem. On the sunlight hillsides of Galilee, Jesus was popular. The crowds were friendly. The future was bright. Even his entry into Jerusalem had been marked by joyous welcomes. But in Jerusalem, there was a growing darkness as the crowds began to draw back from the man who spoke of commitment and servanthood. There was an ominous tone in the murmuring of the Sadducees and the Pharisees who were threatened by the new future that Jesus proclaimed. Even as Jesus and his disciples came together to share their final meal, they already stood in the shadow of the cross. It was later that night, after the meal, as Jesus and his disciples were praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, that Jesus was arrested and taken to the house of Caiaphas the high priest. On Friday, he would die. The sharing of the Eucharist, our sacrament of thanksgiving, on Maundy Thursday, is the means by which most Christians observe this day. Now, to be sure, there's a great variety in exactly how the service is conducted. But however it's celebrated, the Eucharist of Maundy Thursday is especially tied to the theme of remembering. As Jesus and his disciples followed the instructions in the Torah to remember God's acts of deliverance in their history as they shared the Passover meal together, Jesus calls us to remember this new act of deliverance in our history that's been unfolding for us on these last days of Holy Week. The term Maundy, it actually comes from a Latin word, mandatum, from which we get our English word mandate. It's a verb that means to give or to entrust or to order. It's a word that's usually translated commandment from John's account of this Thursday night. According to the fourth gospel, as Jesus and the disciples were eating their final meal together before Jesus' arrest, he washed the disciples' feet to illustrate humility and the spirit of servanthood. And after they'd finished the meal, as they walked into the night towards Gethsemane, Jesus taught his disciples the new commandment that serves as our scripture verse for today. It comes from John chapter 13. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you. you also ought to love one another. And by this, everyone will know you're my disciples if you have this love for one another. Well, as John Piper, the author, has observed, first, the commandment is new because it's a command to live out the love of Jesus. But second, the commandment's new because it's a command to live on the love of Jesus. The words, as I have loved you, well, they contain a pattern for our love for each other. They contain, well, a power for our love for each other. The command from God for us to love one another had never before been tied to the incredible example of Christ himself and what he was about to do. He was saying, hey fellas, do you want to see how to love well? Then watch this. True love is utterly selfless. That's real love in action. What the Greek word calls agape, a very special type of love. As we remember the events of this day, the Last Supper and the institution of the Eucharist, the loneliness of Christ's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, the abandonment of Jesus by his disciples, his trial before high priest and Pilate. Let us remember all of these in the light of his new commandment. Because sacrifice is how we live out the love of Jesus. And the level of sacrifice to which we're called, well, that's only made possible when we live on the love of Jesus. For as we serve those around us, our families, our friends, our congregations, each of us sees that the power to love them in this manner doesn't lie within us. It only lies within him. We can only live out the command he gave us if he is also living in us. And that bears daily remembering. Living out, living in. Two sides of the same commandment to live his love. That's all we got time for this morning, friends. Before you go, could I please ask you to help me introduce people to the Jesus they never knew, and then help them get to know him and his word personally and better? Please like this video. It really will help more people see it. And then click follow or subscribe so that you and I can get together every single day. If you'd like a free copy of my book, Count to One, just click the link in the description, give me your name and your email address. You'll find it in your inbox. Hey, don't forget to share this video with a friend, would you? Because as you do, well, you're part of the team sharing the love of Jesus all over the world. Thanks for helping.